Well, good morning. It's great to be here, as it were. And my name's Don Tapscott, and I'm a longtime supporter and participant in Campus Party. And I'm delighted to be able to do this talk with you today. PowerPoint corrupts absolutely, but I do have a deck here that I want to share with you. This is really a turning point in human history, and I hope that you're all safe and squirreled away in a place that's will keep you well. But the virus has really exacerbated many problems in society, and it's clear to everyone that the world is too vulnerable, it's too dangerous, it's too conflicted, it's too unequal, it's too unjust, it's too racist, and it's too unsustainable. And combined with all of these problems that are creating a pull for a new paradigm in technology, a new model is emerging. The digital age is entering a second era, and that's what I'd like to share with you today. If any of you are tweeting, I'm at dtapscott. I was supposed to be in Sao Paulo right now delivering this speech on the main stage. And this is from the last time I spoke at Campus Party in Sao Paulo a couple of years ago. And I look forward to being part of Campus Party in numerous events in the future, which are physical. The first one probably will be in Montreal next year, where Campus Party is coming to Canada. And I'm very excited about that. As I said, we're at a turning point. The virus is causing extraordinary economic damage, and the human cost is unfathomable. And it's probably just getting started in the developing world and even in the United States. And it will challenge many of our leaders who will be replaced as a result of failing to respond. It will also challenge many of our institutions and many of our systems. And our systems for doing many things are failing. We don't have the data to be able to fight this thing. Supply chains are failing. How can it be that we can't get a paper mask to a frontline worker? And there are many other big problems that have to do with systems and technology. What I'd like to explain to you today and argue to you is that the digital age is entering a second era. And I'd like to share with you, frankly, the promise of this new technology, and then contrast that to the reality, and then talk to you as a campusero what needs to be done to move forward and what you can do to participate. First, on the promise, a little background here. Some of you know I wrote a couple of books in the 1980s that nobody read. I think my mother bought most of the copies. But I've started writing my first bestsellers in the early 90s, Paradigm Shift, that was obviously a big book, and The Digital Economy, that was the first bestseller about the web in business. And 20 years later, I was asked to write the anniversary edition of The Digital Economy, and I had to reflect on what had happened. And it occurred to me that we've gone through a first era of the digital age: mainframes, mini computers, PCs, the internet, the web, social media, the mobile web, the cloud, big data. And now technology is infusing itself into everything, into the physical world, where billions and trillions of inert objects become smart communicating devices, where we have technology that can learn and do things that it wasn't programmed to do. Technology becoming part of our bodies and part of every business process. And I surprised myself by concluding that the foundational technology for the second era was, in fact, the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies, or blockchain. To me, and to us at the Blockchain Research Institute, this represents the second era of the internet. Let me explain. For 40 years, we've had an internet of information. But if I send you some information, an email, a copy of this deck, I'm actually sending you a copy. I'm not sending you the information. And that works great for information. But when it comes to assets, the things that really matter to the economy, things like money, securities, stocks and bonds, intellectual property, the data in our identities, art, music, cultural assets, even votes. A vote is an asset, something of value that belongs to somebody. When it comes to assets, sending a copy of those is a really bad idea. You don't want someone copying your identity or your vote. And if I send you $1,000, it's really important that I don't still have the money, right? So the way that we manage this problem in our economy is through middlemen. And they perform most of the business and transaction logic for every type of commerce. They identify the party, the asset, that's a dollar, you are who you are. They clear and settle transactions, they keep records, and overall they've done a pretty good job, but there are growing problems. They're all centralized, it means that they can be hacked. They capture our data, and we can't use it for ourselves, and our privacy is being undermined. They exclude a couple of billion people from the global economy. They take too long. Why does it take 4 to 7 days for money to go from a housekeeper in Toronto to her mom in Manila? And why is she charged 10 to 20% overall by Western Union? They need help. So what if there were not just an internet of information? What if there were an internet of value, some kind of vast, global, distributed ledger, where anything of value from money to securities to intellectual property was managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way? Well, that's what Satoshi Nakamoto did in 2008. He got this thing started. And for Satoshi, he solved this double spend problem. And this was an extraordinary thing, the biggest innovation in computer science in a generation, in my view, because for the first time ever, people could manage transactions and assets peer-to-peer. And trust is not achieved by an intermediary. It's achieved by cryptography, by collaboration, and by some clever code. That's why we call it the trust protocol. Now, I had a great analogy for why I thought this platform, blockchain, was super secure. But John Oliver on late night TV had some fun with it. So I'm going to show you that right now. He did a whole show.
The network uses to verify records. It is very secure. Now, relax. I'm not going to get into what that process is or how it works, but I will share a really helpful, really dumb metaphor for why it is safe.
The way I like to think of it is that a blockchain is a highly processed thing, sort of like a chicken McNugget. And if you wanted to hack it, it'd be like turning a chicken McNugget back into a chicken. Now, someday someone will be able to do that, but for now, it's going to be tough.
Hold on. That is an absolutely horrible thought. So why is that reporter so happy about the idea? Because if anyone ever figures out how to turn a chicken McNugget back into a chicken, that chicken is going to be up. He's going to spend the rest of his life suffering from PTSD and writing haunting poetry about the experience. The things I saw, buck, or my body is whole, but what of my soul?
My body is whole, but what of my soul? So you can see why I don't use the analogy so much. So Bitcoin was the first app of the Internet of Value, kind of like email was the first app of the Internet of Information. But now there are all kinds of multi-app platforms that enable you to develop any app. Hyperledger from the Linux Foundation. Ethereum, worth over $20 billion, invented by a 19-year-old dropout from Toronto. We've got R3 Corda, 150 banks that are working together to create a new platform for the financial services industry. There are extraordinary new platforms. Cosmos, the Internet of Blockchains, amazing technology, but others that are emerging. Icons, sort of Ethereum, if you like, a replacement in Korea. Hedera that uses hashgraph technology. It's not technically a blockchain, but it's part of this distributed ledger platform. And key to all of these, the notion of smart contracts that enable you to build contracts made of software that self-police and self-execute. So this is a big deal. So I got lucky with the timing of this book. In 2016, there's a new edition out now. They're shown on the screen. It's in 20 different languages. And it turned out to be the big bestseller on the topic. And I got lucky with my co-author too, my son, Alex, who's turns out is a great writer and a brilliant thinker. So the promise, we said, was to fundamentally transform every institution for the better, that we could have a less centralized and world that was controlled more by people rather than by powerful institutions, that we could, many of the intractable problems facing us could be addressed. What's the reality? Well, if you talk to people who ought to know, they say nothing much is going on. After crypto crashed, there was lots of negative stuff about blockchain, and some of that continues today. A report from Gartner said blockchain will be nothing more than a add-on to ERP or CRM. Now, all of you listening and watching, you can be forgiven for having some cognitive dissonance when you see blockchain being adopted by large organizations around the world. Here's one example. It's being adopted by entire countries like China. President Xi Jinping said the two big technologies for the next 50 years in China will be AI and blockchain. And they're moving to creating a digital currency that's got the whole world in a big flap. So what is the reality? Well, at the Blockchain Research Institute, we study dozens of different applications and industries. And I'm going to share 10 with you today, about a minute on each of them, just to give you a feeling. First, supply chains. Problem of conflict diamonds in Africa. It's resulted in the deaths of probably hundreds of thousands of people. Diamonds have fueled tribal wars, terrorism, national conflicts, crime, and so on. It's pretty much been eliminated by the Kimberley process, a multi-stakeholder process, and Everledger, a blockchain platform. The IBM Food Trust. If you're eating fish tonight, 25% of the time, it's labeled incorrectly. It's a cheap fish labeled as an expensive fish, an endangered fish labeled as an okay fish. Food will move and is moving now to blockchains, and IBM's working with big companies like Walmart and Golden State Foods and so on to implement a platform that used to take them 3 weeks to figure out where a bad avocado came from. They can now do it in 20 seconds. Volvo's using a blockchain to trace the cobalt in its batteries. And we can see the problem now in the pandemic. Why do we have hoarding? Well, hoarding comes from fear, and it comes from lack of transparency in a supply chain, also inefficiencies in a supply chain. But if you have transparent supply chains and you know that there's toilet paper on the way, you're not going to buy 3 years of it. And the same is, how do you know that a medical device is an authentic device? With blockchain, we can know the provenance of anything manufactured in a supply chain. So I'm pleased to tell you that I have a new book out called The Supply Chain Revolution. It's now shipping as of 2 days ago on Amazon.com. And I hope you enjoy the book. I'm very proud of it. Health is obviously big on everybody's mind. We need to reinvent public health. And blockchain is being used in the manufacturing side, the wholesale side of pharmaceutical and medical products, in pharmacies themselves, around patient records, within medical facilities, and for insurance companies too. And there are lots of examples of these. I'll just give you a couple. The University Health Network is using blockchain for the patient record to give patients the right to give permission to researchers to use their data. MediaLedger is a blockchain platform that provides track and trace for the pharmaceutical chain in terms of finding counterfeit drugs. And Remedia chain picks up the chain of custody where MediaLedger leaves off, tracking what happens to drugs once they've reached the hand of the patient. It turns out there are billions of dollars of drugs that are perfectly good, that are sealed but are never used, and that could be used. And we've been doing a lot of work on this topic of pandemics in blockchain, and we've decided to release this work publicly. And so it's available to you. Just go to blockchainresearchinstitute.org and you'll find it. blockchainresearchinstitute.org. And it talks about the reinvention of public health around blockchain. The Internet of Things. The company WiseKey is putting billions of chips into devices that are tracking things on a blockchain. And ultimately, when that light bulb buys some power from a distributed power source, and it pays for the power, and its reputation is enhanced as a trustworthy device, and it's searching out on a market for the best source of power all the time. This is not going to run through Visa, okay? We need a distributed ledger. The Internet of Things needs a ledger of things to manage it. Golden State Food is already proving the power of blockchain by putting, they partnered with IBM to track the beef supply chain from farm to table in near real time. And Golden State Foods is the supplier for McDonald's and many of the other big outlets for foods in the world. This is one that's moved more slowly. We had hoped that blockchain would transform land titles. 70% of land titles in the world are not enforceable. You're in Honduras, a dictator comes to power. He says, well, you may have a piece of paper that says you own your farm, but the central government computer says my friend owns your farm. And but the big problem with blockchain and land titles turns out to be that you need to have a valid land title in the first place. So this is moving slowly. The same is true for music. We had hoped that blockchain would transform the music industry and solve the crisis that exists. If you're a songwriter 35 years ago, you write a platinum song that gets 1 million singles, you'd make $46,000 revenue. Today, for an equivalent song, you make $35, which will barely buy you a caipirinha at the Four Seasons in Sao Paulo. So, but the problem here, we could put blockchain on a music platform inside a smart contract, as Imogen Heap has done with Mycelia. And the smart contract specifies the intellectual property rights of the song. You want to put the song in your movie, and the contract says, well, what do you want to do? Somebody going to sing it, theme song, background music, a ringtone. She says the song acts as a business defending my rights. But the problem is that the big labels are not interested in doing this. Now, the good news here is that 90% of all music will be created in the next 10 years. Telecom, 5G, uneven around the world. We've been doing work, and it's available at blockchainresearchinstitute.org, arguing that blockchain could be either a replacement for 5G, that's mesh networks running on a blockchain ledger, or a supplement to 5G. And there are many exciting things going on. Reliance Jio. Reliance is part of Reliance Industries, the largest company in India. They have 300 million users, and they're rolling out blockchain as a service across these users. Energy, big problem. We need to reduce carbon by 80% in the year 2050. And even if we do, bad things will happen. You're looking at 1.5 billion people losing most of their water supply in the next 10 to 15 years. So carbonx.ca full disclosure, I co-founded this company, is tokenizing carbon credits. And the goal here is to change the behavior of billions of people. And there are many other exciting implementations too as we move towards a distributed energy grid. Manufacturing, Moog manufactures precision air parts, and it used to manufacture these parts and ship them out to, say, Boeing. Now, they 3D print the parts in the Boeing factory, and they use blockchain as a platform for tracking all of that. Number 8 is the problem of our identity. It's a very personal thing for every one of you. We currently live under sort of a digital feudalism where the virtual you and all this data that you create knows more about you than you do, because you can't remember what you ate a year ago, or where you were a year ago, or what what you said, or what you bought, or what medication you took, or what diagnosis you had, or what you got on a test, and so on. But this virtual you is captured by these digital landlords, kind of like under feudalism, you created some produce and the landlord took away most of it. Well, the digital landlords take away this new asset class of the digital age, data. You create it, they get it, you're left with a few cabbages. And this is a big problem because it means that you can't use the data to plan your life. You can't monetize the data. The data is insecure and it's going to be hacked. There are two types of these central systems, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. In a pandemic, we can't aggregate this data, say health records, because it's all in different silos. So we don't have early warning systems, and we can't track the growth of the virus real time. And our privacy is being undermined. People who say privacy is dead, get over it, they're foolish, because privacy is the foundation of freedom. And all this data represents our identities, and we need to get our identities back so that we can manage them responsibly. So what if each of us owned this data that we create? A self-sovereign identity on a blockchain in a black box, and it moves around with us, and it's sweeping up all this transactional exhaust that we create, and we can use the data for ourselves. This is not a pipe dream. It's happening in many places around the world, and this could be the key to solving problems of pandemics. Imagine a health record that's capturing your health information, but also your heart rate real time, perhaps your temperature, whether or not you're coughing. And you own that record and it's private, but summary data could be aggregated so that trends could be spotted very quickly. And there are tracking systems now for people who have antibodies to COVID, but that data is out there on somebody's central computer. You're never going to get it back. And it means that they're tracking your personal information. It's a big problem. So some great initiatives underway, SecureKey, Uport, and so on. Check them out. Government. The internet was supposed to transform government. It didn't. But now we have an internet of value that can make a real difference. And the central banks can also move towards central bank digital currencies, and that's happening, being led by China. And then what about democracy? Well, arguably, we have a crisis of leadership, and we have a crisis of legitimacy of our democratic institutions. Young people don't vote. Many believe in the bumper sticker, don't vote, it only encourages them, which is funny, but not really, because democracy is a good system. And we now have a president in the United States who says democracy doesn't work. It's full of fraud, and Washington, the center of American democracy, is a swamp, and who's challenging the free press, who says that the New York Times, sort of always the paper of record, is fake news. I've written for the New York Times. You go through a day of fact checking for a 1,000-word article. This is not the fake news, but this is a big, big problem. And arguably, politicians aren't accountable to the electorate. 94% of citizens in the United States would like to see background checks for firearms, but Congress can't pass a law demanding that. So government for the people, by the people, of the people, this is risible. So what if we had a blockchain platform? We could have e-voting. You're not going to vote online and trust it unless you have cryptographic proof that the double spend problem has been solved, that your vote was cast for the person for whom you voted, and it can't be changed or moved. We could have smart votes. Yeah. Vote inside a smart contract. You have smart money. You send your kid to university. You hope he spends his money on books and tuition. Well, with smart money, he goes into the bar, orders a caipirinha, and the money says, sorry, Carlos, I don't do caipirinhas. I only do books and tuition. Well, you could have a smart vote where you're not just voting for an individual, you're voting for their program. And if they don't implement their program, bad things happen. And the final one, I left it till the end because most people think that this is what blockchain is all about. It's a critical area, but it's not everything. It's financial services. And there are 9 things that the financial industry does. It authenticates value. You are who you are. That's $1. It stores value. It used to be in safes. It moves value. Because it moves value, it gets to lend value and fund value. You know, the angel investing, venture capital, mutual funds, hedge funds, private equity. It exchanges value, all the transactions, stock markets, and so on. It insures value. Insurance companies reinsures. It analyzes value. There's a whole industry that analyzes what happens with money. And it accounts for value, the big accounting companies, auditing companies, and so on. Every one of these, there are operational systems that are making a transformational impact. And we talk about these in our work. More good news, if you want to know about this, you can go to a new book by Alex Tapscott, and it's now selling on Amazon as well. It's called The Financial Services Revolution. And the first major section of the book, Alex talks about these 9 things of the industry and how they're changing. So it's just not true that nothing's happening. It's uneven and combined. Some areas are taking longer. You know, the Internet of Information, you create a website and you're off to business in 24 hours. With blockchain, you're changing a $50 trillion supply chain industry. You're changing the nature and structure of the corporation. You're transforming entire industries like financial services that have a complete regulatory structure and system for them. This is going to take a while. So what does it mean for you? Well, let me point to some things that you might think about doing in your company, in your organization, whether you're big or small. The first one is that blockchain has big implications for enterprise architecture if you're an IT manager in a big company. And we've decided to release this report to the public. It's called Blockchain and the Global CIO, and you can get it at blockchainresearchinstitute.org, blockchainresearchinstitute.org. It's a gorgeous piece of work. It has huge implications. A big problem slowing this down is legacy attitudes. Now, Jamie Dimon has subsequently changed his opinion on Bitcoin. But, you know, I've been around a little older, long enough to remember Ken Olsen, who said a Digital Equipment Corporation, which was pretty much the largest computer company in the world, almost bigger than IBM at the time. There is no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home. Famous last words. Well, leaders of old paradigms have difficulty embracing the new. And your company, there are people who care about this. Find them. You need to think big, but start small with figuring out good use cases. And they lead to good pilots. Ultimately, when you go operational, you can't just change your company. In many areas, you're going to have to change your industry. So you should join your industry association. If you're in transportation, join Blockchain and Transport Alliance. If you're in oil and gas and energy, join the Oil and Gas Blockchain Association. Both of these are affiliates of the Blockchain Research Institute. And then you need to get the right partners when you go operational. So some things that can help you specifically. We spent almost $1 million developing online courses. They run on Coursera, and also they're being offered through INSEAD, arguably, according to the FT. It's always been one of the top 3 business schools in the world for years. And these 4 courses, which are now in English and Portuguese, take you through the whole process. And they end up, you have to do a practicum to figure out the use cases in your industry. And these are peer evaluated. And you get a formal certificate at the end of the whole thing. For Campus Party, we've arranged a special discount through Coursera that if you enroll now, the next few days, you'll get 25% off. Take a picture of that URL. It's www.coursera.org. Coursera.org, and then /promo/blockchain revolution. Let me close by talking to you a little bit about the challenges of leadership and moving forward. There's still a lot of potential and a big gap between the actual deployment. And that's what we in the Blockchain Research Institute are attempting to solve. We're now expanding globally. We have the BRI in Sao Paulo, and next week, you heard it here first, we're announcing the creation of the Blockchain Research Institute in Germany, for Europe, all of Europe, and it will be based in Berlin. And if you're from a large company or even a small company, check us out at blockchainresearchinstitute.org. We'd love to have you join us. Also, 2 days ago, we held the Enterprise Blockchain Awards. This was virtual, and it was done on a virtual stage through hologram technology. And we beamed in, this is Alex Tapscott being beamed in, giving the award for supply chain applications. We beamed in various people, performers, and so on. And we're making this available for the next 5 days at www.blockchainrevolutionglobal.com. I hope you'll go there and check it out. It's extraordinary. This is being done in partnership with MCI, one of the organizers of Campus Party, and also a hologram and virtual reality company called Art Media, ARHT Media. They're our great partners. So to close, this is a new paradigm. The digital age is entering a second era, and it's about time because the world needs a new paradigm. When you get one of these, they create dislocation, confusion. They're often received with coolness or worse. Vested interests fight against change, and leaders of the old paradigm have great difficulty embracing the new. How will you become a leader? And how will you find leadership in your company? Well, leadership can come from anywhere. And I encourage you to check out the resources that we've made available to you. So let me close with an analogy. At the Blockchain Research Institute, we've been studying nature, and fish come in schools, bees come in swarms. Starlings over the moors of England come in something called a murmuration. And it stands for the murmuring of the wings of the birds. It's a word in the English dictionary. And starlings are out around a 20-mile radius throughout the day, collecting food and so on. At night, they come together and create one of the most spectacular things in all of nature. And the murmuration has a function. It warms the birds up for the cold night, and it also protects the birds from predators. If you look on the right of the screen here, you can see a predator, a hawk, 25 times the size of a little starling, being chased away by the collective power of the little birds. And scientists that have studied this say they've never seen an accident. There's leadership, but there's no one leader. And when the time is right, this magic happens. Is this some kind of fanciful analogy, or might you actually learn something from it? Well, the murmuration functions under the principles of the trust protocol, which we describe in our books and courses and the work. The murmuration, remember I said trust
Hello. Hi, Don. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Don. What happened with your computer? Hello?
Can you
Yes, I can hear you.
hear me? Oh,
Yes, we
it's
can hear
unbelievable.
you. Something happened with the Don computer. And I don't know, Giacomo and our team, if we can talk something to Don about the situation. But now we are in the Q&A time, and if Don can help listen us, will be impossible make the questions. Okay, remove me from the stage, please.
It's Don Tapscott. I'm sorry I can't hear you guys, but unbelievable. I have a brand new Mac. Things never crashed. I can't hear you. I'm sorry, Giorgio. Can't hear you. Text me, please.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Read the chat. I'm reading a chat. It says, look here. Oh, okay. Am I going on stage or are we done? How will I know that I'm live? Okay. Okay, I'm waiting.
Let's try if you listen to me now. Hi, Don. Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Now it's asking for my email address.
We have problem. Okay. Sorry, guys. Can't remove us from the stage to talk in the backstage. I think it's the only way we can talk with Don, please. Giacomo.
Archie, Bruce. Okay. Well, technical problems, everybody. You may be able to see me, and I apologize for that. Brand new Mac, and it crashed for the first time ever. And I'm sorry I didn't get to complete the analogy, but the idea is that we're moving towards a more decentralized world, and in the murmuration, trust is achieved by collaboration and by the code in the DNA of the birds that gives it certain rules. It's a murmuration has an interdependence, and it has a great integrity. So that a little bird will chase after a killer 25 times its size because it knows that the other birds will do the right thing. So I get a lot of hope for that when I see that this smaller, more distributed world that our children inherit might actually be a better one. Thanks so much. And I'm at dtapscott.com on Twitter. Let's continue the conversation. Thank you.